Okay, we are going live on YouTube.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hey, everybody.
Kathy, you're muted.
I know we're on YouTube, but I just want everybody to know, if you can see the window treatment behind me, name of the fabric pattern is Hampshire.
Oh,
I did not do that on purpose. I just want you to know. It's lovely.
it is lovely.
Matches the picture next to it. That was our inspiration for the color.
Okay.
Here's the picture next to it. I have it in 2 windows. Yes. I thought you'd all like that. It's going to be with me forever, as long as I'm in this house in America. Everybody's good? Everybody want to press their mic and make sure everybody's connected properly? You can see everybody, although Greg just left the picture. Lou, you're muted. Richard, do you want to just say a few words so we know you're connected properly?
I see Lou.
Okay, there's Lou. Okay.
Hi, Richard.
Greetings.
Okay. Where's Greg? Where did Greg go?
I think we need Greg.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here.
Here
Sorry.
he is.
That's okay.
Hi, buddy.
It's 7:01 according to my clock. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's the May 4th meeting of the Village of Mamaroneck. A special meeting to work on the Hampshire Country Club application. We're going to begin this meeting with a session for the advice of council. So I need a motion to go into that session.
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Hi.
Okay, I'll ask that you please turn your video off and I'll
We'll
mute
be
you.
back in a little while. Short while, I hope. We need Lou. All right, while we're waiting for him, I need a motion to end the session of the advice of council.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
How did we lose Lou? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the final, hopefully, the findings statement, the secret finding statement on the Hampshire Country Club planned residential development. I have no comments on this last draft.
I
A
have,
hidden typo because Stuart was going to test me, but I couldn't find one.
I have no comments except to say bravo, Stuart.
Yeah, thank you.
got it.
Stuart. Anybody else have any comments?
I'm good.
There's Lou. Lou, unmute yourself. You have to, Greg, can you unmute him? Okay. Lou, while we were waiting for you to reconnect, we came out of executive session and we started the discussion on the finding statement. No one so far has any comments on this latest draft. Do you have any comments on the latest draft?
Oh.
No, okay. So then we have a resolution in front of us to adopt the findings. Any questions or comments on the resolution? No? Okay, and I need a motion to adopt the findings. The secret finding statement for the Hampshire Country Club planned residential development dated today.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Cindy?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, everyone. That was the culmination of a lot of hard work. Okay. Next item on the agenda. This is going to take some doing as we do this remotely, is a public hearing on the 5 applications submitted by the applicant for this project. Special permit for the planned residential development, the subdivision application, application for site plan approval, application for wetlands permit, and application for floodplain development. Now, as you just heard, and this is directed to people watching, through an extensive environmental review, which included hours of public input, that the applicant failed to mitigate serious environmental impacts of the project. These findings will cause this project to be denied. These issues have been decided and are not the subject of tonight's hearing. Once we open the public hearing, we will proceed as follows. The applicant will have 15 minutes for a presentation to this board. The principal opponent will then have 15 minutes for their presentation, and then we'll open the hearing by the public. Now, I want everyone to remember, this hearing is the 5 applications and the scope of the applications. Because of the volume of people who they wish to speak, the speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. We'll have a timer on the screen. We have lots of people in there. If everybody wanted to speak, we will be here for hours. So even with the limits. So if someone has made the point about the applications that you wish to make, please think about whether or not you want to continue to speak. Everyone, of course, is welcome to speak, and you're welcome to express your opinion. But again, we're talking only about the 5 applications tonight and not about the project. So I need a motion to open the public hearing on the 5 applications just mentioned.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, let's do a voice vote. Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Lou,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Public hearing is now open and the applicant will be allowed to begin their presentation as soon as we get all this technology stuff done.
Okay, applicant, please raise your hand if you're part of the applicant team. So I can unmute you. Please use the raise your hand feature. Okay, I've got 3. Okay.
Chair, there will be a slight chime when the applicants reach the 2-minute warning towards the end of the time allotted for his presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, timekeeper.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
You can
thank
turn your video on if you'd like.
Okay,
Please, we like to see the people speaking. We all need haircuts, so don't worry about it.
no, took care of that already. Or my wife did. Good evening. My name is, as you know, David Cooper from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, representing the applicant Recreation. With me tonight is Matthew Acasella, my colleague, John Canning from Kimley Horn, the project engineers, Dan Pfeffer, a representative of Hampshire Recreation LLC. We had planned on Michael Youngins, the project engineer, also attending tonight. Unfortunately, there's been a illness in the family, and so he's not able to participate tonight. Let me put the, can I share my screen? Yes.
Yes, you can.
Put okay, the site plan up. It appears we are at the end of a long and uncanny review process that started in 2015. Anything but a normal review process, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
As Mr. Messenger noted last meeting, typically at this stage of the review, the applicant and the municipality would be working together to identify modifications to the site plan, et cetera, to the project that would permit development and move forward while being responsive to concerns raised during the review process. This process has been the opposite. Each time Hampshire has attempted to demonstrate how the project design and the site plan will address the concern raised, the facts presented have been met with skepticism and frankly, at times outright disdain. For example, Hampshire provided almost a decade's worth of tax returns and market studies demonstrating that the club has been in negative operating revenue and the recreational club industry is in trouble. And even though those tax returns have been prepared by reputable professionals with licenses on the line, had there been any misrepresentations in them and subjects to IRS audit, this board has claimed that somehow they've fabricated that information and Hampshire is in fact making money hand over fist in a hurting industry. That conclusion or that assumption doesn't reflect the facts, frankly, yet it appears to be a central point of your decision making. Another example would be the tree cover, or tree cover example in the site plan. While preparing the FEIS, planning board raised a concern about the length and time it would take for a tree canopy to regrow and types of trees planted. The normal process, a reviewing board would engage the applicant, particularly during the site plan process and site plan application review, which we're now in, to explore if, for example, larger trees could be planted or different types could be planted. Not here. The planning board simply adopted negative findings without any input, ignoring the applicant's submissions regarding the ample wooded areas around the site, which I've just pulled up, and not even engaging Hampshire in a productive discussion about landscaping options. Now, I do not expect that tonight will be any different. Any facts we present, I'm sure will be rejected without any further study. I'm sure that you'll hear from MCEC's representatives tonight because you've given them 15 minutes. They're going to be accusing Hampshire's professionals of deceit and other evils that the record evidence simply doesn't support. Case in point, your board just adopted secret findings, concluding that no development can occur at the site because there's no viable point of evacuation during the flood. This conclusion simply isn't true. We presented a plan last month to the board showing that Hampshire has the ability to prevent the low point in Cooper Avenue from flooding during any storm. And I'm submitting it again to you tonight as part of this public hearing. I emailed Greg and Betty Ann. We would hope that during the site plan review and the subdivision review process, the village would embrace the opportunity to provide emergency access for the entire Orienta neighborhood for the first time ever. We've spent years asserting, and you've spent years asserting that flooding was a concern due to the existing conditions in the neighborhood. Nothing that Hampshire was going to do, existing conditions. We've provided a solution, an ability to access and get out of this neighborhood throughout any storm. And we would hope that the board would embrace that opportunity to explore this solution. But instead, the opposite is occurred. Your board has refused to consider it. The board should have filed modified findings or modified its findings based on this new information pursuant to section 617.11 of the SEQA regulations to correct a central assumption that's incorrect in your findings. At the very least, when presented with this information, the board should be supplementing the EIS and correct the findings pursuant to 6179 of the SEQA regulations, because it's a change to the project design and site plan and PRD layout. It's new information, and it's very relevant to your findings because it demonstrates that a critical assumption is incorrect. Under the SEQA standards, that would call for supplementation, but the board instead is just, quote, rejecting and refusing to consider that information. Now, frankly, I believe a court's going to scratch its head as to why, when presented with a potential solution to the major problem that you've all identified over the last 4 years, you've refused to consider it and just rejected it out of hand. I could continue as to how this site plan that's before you is designed, and the subdivision is designed to address the various concerns that have been brought up over the last 4 years during the process. But frankly, I assume I'm going to be wasting my time because I've seen your finding statement and your resolutions of denial that are already on the table. What I want to do is use the rest of my time allotted to Hampshire to allow a representative of Hampshire to address your board. The applicant has sat through 4 years of the review process quietly, many times not even being able to speak, while Hampshire has been accused of various wrongdoings without justification. And if we're at the end of the process, I do believe that the applicant deserves to be heard. So I will turn it over to Mr. Pfeffer in a second. Afterwards, we're happy to answer any questions about the plan, or we'll turn it over to the public hearing. Greg, can you how do I give the screen over to someone on the team? Or just allow them to talk?
He should be able to talk.
You hear me okay, Greg?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll try to be brief, although it's a little bit difficult after 4 years of having to maintain silence during these meetings. When we first began, we truly expected a process that would be fair and open. In other words, we expected what the law called for. After all, we are landowners that have a property that is zoned for single-family homes and, quite frankly, protected by certain legal rights that are granted to landowners. We came up with a thoughtful development that was engineered and designed by some of the country's best and brightest. What we asked for and really craved and wanted was feedback from the planning board. That is normally what happens in a process like what we just went through. But nothing about this process has been normal at all. And as David Cooper just said a little while ago, the planning board's own consultant said that usually at this time, if not always, the applicant and the lead agency come to an agreement. There's been no interaction. In this case, from the beginning, the planning board set out to reject this project. That's clear, and that's what they have done. Started with a scope that was agreed to and then expanded and continuously expanded, contrary to what the regulations state. Throughout this process, certain vocal members of the planning board seem to rely on personal relationships to guide them versus the facts that were set out and agreed to by the planning board's own consultants. The personal relationships are on clear display tonight. We were all just told that we as the applicant have 15 minutes to speak and the rest of the community has about 3 minutes. But these rules don't apply if you're MCEC, a small group that was established with one purpose, which was to get Hampshire's plan rejected from the get-go. The consultants that have been retained by MCEC purport to know more about this property than we, the owners, do, or our engineers, or even the Village of Mamaronec's own outside consultants. And they've acted as a de facto advisor to the planning board. You've got to ask yourself, is this typical? Again, the answer is absolutely no. Let's talk about a few examples of things that have been criticized. For example, the potential for flooding. The planning board's own consultant said that the development will not cause harm or additional flooding to neighboring properties. And the construction method makes sense and will prevent the constructed homes from being flooded. And our new roads will be above flood level. You know what the planning board said? We don't believe it, not based on fact or the experts that they chose. Let's talk about fill as another example. And for those of you on the call that don't know what fill is, it's simply soil that's brought in to raise certain areas of the property, and it's a common practice. Planning board now, you are saying we cannot do it, and you refuse to allow it. However, others who live in the same village are allowed to. It's just another targeted attack on the development process. Oh, and the village's own consultant was okay with it. As he said, this is standard practice. The planning board will tell you that everything they did was right and that we are simplifying the issues. You know what? We're not simplifying it. They told us that we were bullying them after 4 years of a drawn-out process, and we had absolutely no choice but to go to court to seek assistance to get the planning board to finish this process, which has now taken twice as long as the impact statement took for the new Tappan Zee Bridge. Of course, when the village responded to our lawsuit, they said that the judge had no jurisdiction here. For those of you that are wondering, the judge found in our favor. For those of you on the call tonight that don't know, this public hearing tonight, like most of the 21 work sessions we've been subjected to, I think it's a new record, is just an opportunity for the planning board to continue with their intention of rejecting this project outright. For those of you on the call today that have listened to the hype of Mamaroneck Coastal that has claimed that we will destroy the schools, you should know that we presented options to the planning board, some of which included virtually no school children, including an age-restricted development. In other words, that would have been a project that would represent additional dollars to the school district without a significant amount of new school-aged children. That was rejected outright. I am quite happy that there is a judicial process that exists and looks at things impartially. No emotion, no hidden agendas, no friendships, just facts. And what we've done throughout this process is to lay out the facts. There's a long history of the courts intervening in the village of Mamaroneck, meaning a developer accusing a village of doing something wrong and the courts agreeing with the developer. But why should this project be different? And I'll tell you why. It's because of the low density that was planned for 116 acres. And it's the clear mitigations that have been laid out. It's because of the revenues that will be generated. It's also because of the tax base that would be established. And it's because of the much needed jobs that will be created and the amount of open space that would also be created forever. Curiously, the planning board doesn't seem to care, and you don't seem to care that much about it at all. To the individual members of the planning board, I guess the only thing I can say is you've let personal relationship pull the village yet into another court battle with an applicant who has a right to develop a property and has been outright rejected by this board. I think you've forgotten that your work is supposed to be on behalf of all village residents. You have forgotten and ignored that over 1,100 Village of Mamaroneck residents signed petitions in favor of a development. You have chosen to marginalize them. We know that you will continue to paint us as villains rather than as the landowners who are zoned for single-family homes who are just trying to get what is right. You know what? We will still continue to do what we do. We will still continue to host the critical and dozens of not-for-profit organizations that rely on us and that we have supported since we have owned the property. We will still continue to be the home course at no charge to the Mamaroneck and Rhinebeck high schools. We will still continue to be there when the disasters hit, whether it's a hurricane like Sandy, where we operated a shelter and fed residents, or during the pandemic, I'll be done in 10 seconds. When we continue to support the first responders and the food bank today, that you cannot take away from us, because that's something we will continue to do, because quite frankly, that's exactly who we are. So thank you for your time.
Unless there are any other questions for the board, we'll turn it over.
Kathy, you're muted.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Any comments? We'll move on to the next phase of this hearing where we are going to hear from the principal opponent to this project, which is, from my understanding, as I was told, standard operating procedure, even though not everybody agrees with that. Okay. And Greg, could you turn on the video for the person who's speaking, please, so we can see?
Hi.
Okay, thank you. All right, you have 15 minutes.
I'm
For,
dividing this into 3 parts. Report, county, and then yes.
I think we're having trouble with your audio.
Close to your mic, Celia.
Can you hear me?
Better.
Now we can.
Okay, I'll
May you identify yourself, please?
Celia Felcher, 521 Eagle Knolls Road, and I'm president of the Mamaroneck Coastal Environment Coalition. I'd first like to say that in response to the prior comments, I do believe it is Hampshire that has oversimplified the story, the history, and the facts. And people should look at the full many hundreds of pages of material in the environmental impact statement to actually understand what the facts are and not the overlay of emotion we just heard. In any event, Hampshire's application for the special permit to build the PRD should not be approved. Under the village code, the planning board is authorized to approve a PRD only, quote, for the purpose of promoting environmental protection, open space preservation, and superior design of residential development, encouraging the most appropriate use of land, increasing recreational opportunities, and improving the balance and variety of the existing housing stock. As the seeker findings and the EIS make it clear, the proposed development does not serve any of these purposes, and therefore there can be no basis upon which the PRD may be authorized. Given the property's topography and zoning requirements, including restrictions on building and floodplains throughout the village, only about 20 to 25 homes could effectively be built. It would be ludicrous to use the special authority granted under PRD provisions to enable a massively denser project than could otherwise actually be possibly built. Significant flooding risks also make it clear that the proposed development should not be permitted. And as opposed to what was just said, we have not claimed that the property as it would be developed would lead to flooding of other properties. That's been said over and over again, and we have not taken that. The issue is flooding for a different reason, and it also shows why our code provisions restricting development on floodplains are so important and really have to be strictly enforced. As we know, the property has been overwhelmed by tidal floods several times. And as the NYSERDA report, which is included in the EIS, says, flood levels are expected to rise, sea levels are expected to rise by up to 5 feet in the next 60 years, with a mid-range estimate of 18 to 39 inches. In addition, that report states, which we all know, that as sea levels rise and due to climate change, coastal flooding associated with the storms will very likely increase in intensity, frequency, and duration. There are currently only 2 access roads to the property, both of which we all know flood and become impassable in tidal surges. The proposed extension of Cooper Avenue to create the alternative access road, even if it were, quote, fixed in the past midnight hour Hail Mary submission by the club, would not solve the problem. Cooper is only wide enough for one-way traffic, period. Once you get off the property, that will create a nightmare situation if emergency vehicles need to access the property as residents are attempting to flee. That is not changed. In addition, where the height is 13 feet at one point, that's only 1 foot above current elevation. As you can see from slides, and I would like to share this slide, Greg, I don't know how to do that again.
Just click the share screen button. It's the green button at the bottom. And then click share again.
Okay. And then I'll go to, what do I press? This. I hope this isn't part of my 15 minutes. Share. Full screen. Okay. As you can see from these, there's the basic plan. At a 28-inch sea level rise, which is less than even the midpoint of the mid-range of the projected sea level rise, you can see that the 3 entrances to the project would be flooded. Cooper at that point would be under 1.5 feet of water. With the proposed fix of building a wall to 14.5 feet, if you had flood waters even 1/8 of an inch over a 30-inch sea level rise, that entire canyon created by their protective wall would flood and flood the entire development. In addition, the flood would create other problems. The roads to the project have a mean elevation of 14 feet, which is only 2 feet or 24 inches above current floodplain. Floodplain, those streets could flood in a bad storm, which we'll get to if we look at even at the 38-inch, which is still within the mid-range. You can see the flood waters will start flooding the roads in the development because they are only at a 14-foot elevation. Flood waters coming in through Cove Road here, flood waters coming in through Eagle Mills there, and you would have flooding throughout the level of the roads that would make access and egress impassable at significant sea level, mid-range sea level rises and significant storms. In the worst case, at a 58-inch sea level rise, which is granted the worst case projections are 90%, the entire development is completely inundated. I next would like to talk about economic impact, which you heard again. The positive impacts of the project touted by the developers are significantly overstated and may in fact be negative. The developers base their entire revenue projections on a projected market value of $2.6 million for each home and $1.3 million for each 3-bedroom carriage house and the 4-bedroom homes. The information in the record regarding comparable new home values does not support these numbers. The average price of the 4-bedroom homes are $1.7 million, almost $1 million less than that projected by the developer. The projected values of the carriage homes were based on the listing price for carriage homes in a new development in Rybrook, which only listed starting prices of $900,000, where the developers here extrapolated increased pricing based solely on increased square footage, which is not appropriate. Also, additional expenses resulting from the project, in particular the school district, are understated. The developer used existing per student program costs rather than existing all-in student costs, which would have been more appropriate. In addition, the applicant projected 66 new students to be generated by the project, which is much lower than the 85 students projected by the school district. In sum, if we were to do the school district economic analysis using more realistic assessed values of $1.7 million for the single family homes and even $1.1 million for the carriage homes, the all-in per student cost of the district, and a projection of 85 new students. In actuality, the cost to the district would actually exceed revenue generated by approximately $115,000. Thank you. Karen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Karen Mira of Carter Ledyard in Milburn, representing MCEC. We urge the board to reject the applicant's special permit, site plan, subdivision, and floodplain development applications. I'm going to talk very briefly about density and the failure to, the fact that the project exceeds the maximum permissible density on this site and also fails to comply with village standards for site plans and subdivisions. Your findings, starting with density, your findings clearly spell out the procedure for determining the maximum density under the village PRD and the state cluster subdivision laws, so I won't repeat all that here. I will say that the village PRD regulations give you the authority to reduce the maximum density of a PRD if you determine that environmental limitations, traffic access, or other planning considerations make that density inappropriate. And you have effectively already made that determination. In your findings, you determined that the site's location in a 100-year flood zone is an environmental limitation, that the proposed ingress and egress would be inundated and inadequate in future flood conditions, and that the project would alter many of the features that qualify the site as a critical environmental area by reducing and fragmenting its open space, leveling its topography, and destroying 432 mature trees. So the secret record shows that among the development options for the site, a density of 25 units would have the least impact on the floodplain, the trees, the topography, and the open space. And we therefore urge the board to exercise its discretion to determine that the maximum permissible density for development of this site under the PRD regulations is approximately 25 units. Moving on to state law, New York State law on cluster subdivisions caps density at the number of units that can be developed under existing zoning for a conventional subdivision that conforms to all other applicable requirements. And as we've previously testified and showed, because most of this site is below the base flood elevation and the village code wisely prohibits filling the floodplain, a conventional subdivision on this site could accommodate at most 21 to 25 units. And that's consistent with your findings. You found that the prohibition on filling the floodplain applies here and that the applicant could not qualify for a variance. If it couldn't qualify for a variance for the project, it certainly couldn't qualify for a variance for a conventional subdivision, which would have brought in 350,000 cubic yards of fill, according to the applicant's figures in the FEIS. So excessive density alone is reason enough to deny the application, but moving on to your site plan regulations, you have standards that you need to consider as you assess an application, and here there's several that absolutely can't be met. I'm going to go quickly because it sounds like we're running out of time, and maybe we will pass the baton in a second, but I just want to mention section 34276 sets out your standards. Subsection A, ecological considerations, says it has to, any development has to result in minimal degradation, encourages conforming to the existing geology and topography, insofar as practicable, minimizing tree and soil removal. You know, the project absolutely does not meet these standards. It excavates, blasts, levels 55 acres of this site, removing all vegetation, including the 432 mature trees, all topographic features, and replaces them with a denuded, unnatural development platform. Moving on, the other things I wanted to mention related to flooding, subsection E, you must comply with the Village Code's flood damage prevention requirements. It doesn't, we've already talked about that. The ingress and egress, Celia Felsher on behalf of MCEC just spoke about that as well, so I'm going to skip over that, but it'll be in my written comments. In sum, it fails to meet the site plan standards. Also, last point is your subdivision standards require development to be consistent with public health, safety, and general welfare. And also, you must be able to find that the property can safely be used without danger to health or peril from flood. Again, I think that previous comments have already made the point that there really is no safe ingress and egress. And so you cannot make those findings under the subdivision regulations. And for all these reasons, we respectfully request that you deny the application. And I want to pass over to Steve Cass.
Good evening. Am I on, Greg?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the planning.
Is there time left, Betty Ann?
There's 2 minutes.
Let me just speak very quickly. I think that you are all to be commended for the careful review you've done over this time, with the precise statutory requirements and the individual environmental impacts of this project. But it's useful at the end of this lengthy process that you've undertaken to step back, I think, and realize that there are larger planning issues also involved with this project. As you know from what Celia quoted to you, New York City and the New York State flood projections are very extreme for this property. In fact, they've been updated even since the report cited in your EIS and the 2019 report for the city and for the New York metropolitan area shows a very significant risk of higher sea level rise in 2080 and in 2100 because of accelerating Antarctic ice melt, which is having an effect in New York. If anything, your flood projections are too favorable, honestly, to the applicant and not conservative enough. But I commend you for what you've done. But what all this indicates and what the city climate change panel made clear is that people should not be building anything if there's an alternative use. Here, there is such an alternative use. The as of right use is perfectly for environmental protection. It is adequate today, and it is adequate tomorrow and the day after as flood control measure. Not financially feasible, and I will not go through the record again, but it's clear that notwithstanding the applicant's protest and concern, the record demonstrates that an 18-hole golf course with this country club is financially viable. Indeed, there's an offer to purchase it for $5 million and restricted for its existing use. In the minute remaining, let me make a brief comment or two about the new flood wall proposal that the applicant has unveiled, actually in a letter to council, and again by council this evening. We've not seen an engineering presentation of it. Robert Frost noted that there is something that doesn't level wall. Among the things that don't level wall is water. Water always, no matter what kind of water is up. And we believe it's quite clear that in these circumstances, while you might be able to prevent some floodwater from escaping off-site at some parts of Cooper Avenue, in fact, a flood wall is likely to create new problems that haven't been analyzed and are not part of even the existing inadequate proposal. A 10-foot flood wall rising to 14 feet is likely to increase ponding on the outside of the wall in the Cooper Avenue neighborhood, likely isolating.
Mr. Cass, you're over time. We let Mr. Pfeffer speak for a few minutes over his time, but we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we need to clear the screen. Thank you. Okay, and I guess we are technically moving some things around so that we're moving people who spoke off the screen, and there's okay. Let me know when you're ready, Greg.
Okay. Do you see the clock?
Yes. It's going to be that large. See the person?
Is that better?
No.
Basically the same. All right.
All right.
I don't know how many people who are participating tonight wish to address this board. So I know we have a list of about 20 people who submitted their names or some information. Some of you have already spoken. But I guess, Greg, how do we do this? Because we're not all in a room together.
Yep. So what we'll do is we'll ask each resident or member of the public that would like to speak to use the raise your hand feature, and then I'll unmute you. I'll start the time clock for the 3 minutes. You'll be able to make your comment, and then when it's done, we'll move on to the next person. We'll go one at a time. If you are calling in, I ask that you send me your name and your phone number so I can identify you, and we'll go through the call-ins after everybody on the Zoom app has made their public comment. If you're watching from home and you can't call in, or you can't figure out how to call in, or you can't join the meeting through Zoom, then you can send me an email and I will just share my screen and show all the emails that come in a document to the board. So I'll just put them up on the screen so everyone can see all the written comments that come in.
And as you begin your remarks, please identify yourself. Not everybody's name is clear on the participant list. Some people are using screen names. Some people are using numbers to identify themselves. We need, for the public record, we need your name. And also, if you could tell us what town you live in, that would be helpful.
And also, sorry, I don't think I said my email address. My email address is gcutler@vomny.org. That's GCUTLER@vomny.org.
Hey, Greg, can I say, I think you still have Mr. Cass as a panelist. I'm not sure that he would.
Okay. Give me one moment. Thank you.
We're all learning new things these days. And will we be able to see the person who's speaking, Greg?
I don't believe so. It'll just be audio.
Okay.
It would be very hard to handle any other way. Okay, so I'm gonna start if that's okay, Chair.
Right ahead.
Okay, first up is Bob Goodman. Okay, you should be able to talk. I'm going to start the clock.
Okay, great. I'm not going to use all 3 minutes, but I want to thank the board for their incredible effort in this project. My name is Bob Goodman. I'm a resident at 1013 Cove Road, which is literally right next to and surrounded by Hampshire. And I'm neither a lawyer or an engineer. However, I have lived at this place for 24 years, and countless times I've seen both the golf course and the road flooded. And I've seen the water in Delancey Cove, which is the cove behind Hampshire, is very close to the ground level. I think there's only about 14 feet between the water and the highest level that we have here. Without being an engineer, I can tell you that today we have flooding issues throughout both the road and the golf course. And we all know that climate change is coming. And as we see and read about and have read and Celia presented the increase in the flood level, a couple of feet rise of water is going to make it impossible both to get to my house and to get from my house out of here, not to mention the houses that are proposed to be building, particularly with the change of the road that's proposed. I think, I think all the other issues aside, all the other regulatory issues aside, I think the flooding has made this project a non-starter from the beginning. And so I'm going to cede the rest of my time.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to remind people that the comments are on the applications tonight. We've already received and utilized comments on the actual project itself during the SEQRA process. Thank you.
Okay, next up will be Arthur Goldstein. Okay, can you talk?
Okay. It's Gloria Goldstein. I live on Sylvan Lane in Mamaroneck. I am strongly against the developer's application for the proposed plant residential development. It is clear when one looks at the definition of a planned residential development in our village code that a project such as the one proposed for Hampshire was never something intended by the statute. A planned residential development is defined as a project that has been determined to be of significant benefit to the village. Given the information in the final environmental impact statement and the findings presented by the planning board, which describe so many unmitigated serious adverse impacts, it is absolutely clear that this project cannot qualify as a planned residential development. There is no basis on which it could be determined to be of significant benefit to the village. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up is Stuart Seltzer.
Thank you. The, so
We can hear
I'm
you.
also a resident of Sylvan Lane and 945 Sylvan Lane. We also back up onto Hampshire, and we were also subject to floods in our house that actually originated on the Hampshire property way back in Sandy Farm, some significant flood of our entire first floor. But I also wanted to point out and first thank the planning board for their work, painstaking work and long work on this to reach the conclusion that this project is completely inconsistent with the village's current comprehensive plan for land use, which thankfully the comprehensive plan does recognize the importance of the Hampshire property as a critical environmental area, as the largest remaining attractive open space in the village. Therefore, that you recommend Hampshire be rezoned as an open space. And if that doesn't happen, to at least just allow cluster development that would lead to less dense buildings and more open space than otherwise would be possible. Allowing this, where the loss of open space and density of new housing would be much greater than would be feasible or permissible without approval of your group, makes no sense, is completely at odds with a recommendation of the comprehensive plan. And I'll close just by saying that I'm surprised, I've been watching this from the start, and when Danny and Pfeffer and his team first brought it and pledged to be good corporate citizens, good corporate neighbors, good neighbors in general, and at first pledged not to build for 5 years, and now they're, aggressively building. But how can they really be trusted as a good partner when they continue to threaten lawsuits like you just heard today, and actually file lawsuits like you've seen in the past? So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Luis Quiros. 1 second. Okay, you should be able to speak.
Okay, I'm on. As a taxpayer and resident of the village, I am tired of wasting my tax dollars on lawsuits by developers because, among other social reasons, the planning board doesn't like development. The village has wasted over $7 million on lawsuits against developers over the past several years. With this virus crisis, don't you think we need the tax money? What other company is banging at our door to bring in millions in construction and tax money for our community? If it's true what Celia and others are saying that are for the property, why aren't their houses up for sale? This program for today could be saved by any potentially future buyers of a land that you have already admitted is dead in the water and under sea level. So you have destroyed your own potential investment. Additionally, where is the due process and your responsibility to the public when you voted before the public comment? This is disgraceful. In over 25 years of living here, actually 35 years of living here, I have not seen this happen in public hearing when a vote happens before the hearing. And we should be able, and if you're so committed to the truth, why aren't you, you should donate all your houses to the village, because you're gonna be underwater anyway. Thank you.
Okay. Next up. Okay, whoever Duell 40 is, if you could just send me an email with your name so we can confirm. We're just trying to make sure that we don't get Zoom bombed or someone doesn't come in and start disrupting the meeting. So I'm going to go to Gisela Moroccan.
Thank you. I'm a longtime resident of Mamaroneck. I've grown up here and I've lived in different parts of the village as well as worked in different parts of the village, including the flood zone that's actually part of the flats. I'm a social worker trained in community organizing, and as such, I am trained and charged with understanding systems and tactics meant to elicit transparency and accountability. I understand that the opposition of the environmental impact statement is a neighbor and friend of board members. And so I'm really curious. I would like to know, why haven't those board members recused themselves in any of these proceedings? And additionally, why are there only the few planning board members that we have here at this hearing for this project? With so many people in this country, close to 30 million, I believe, that are unemployed currently, if not more, the tax revenue is really necessary. And the tax net revenue that we currently have is sure to be at a shortfall in the village very quickly. This project will gross around, I believe, 5.5 million every year in taxes and net another million every year after. Why would we say no to considering this disproportionate amount of hardship that falls on so many residents? And I'm not only talking about those that we label low income, but actually the impact that it has on our entire community, including myself and other professionals. Thank you.
I just want to clarify the process that we're here. The vote that was taken before was to close out the secret process. The next step in this process, in this application, is to consider the applications submitted by the applicant. And that's what these public hearings are about, the applications. We have already gone through the process, and the public had many opportunities over the past couple of years to submit comments with regards to whether they support the project or don't support the project. In fact, some of the people speaking tonight are people that are in the public record as having spoken. Tonight, we're focusing on the applications for the planned residential development, the subdivision, the site plan, the wetlands permit, and the flood development permit. So I would very much like for people to, I know it's a complicated process and we're trying to explain it to you as best we can. So let's continue. And if we don't see your full name on the screen, could you please identify yourself and tell us what town you live in? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually going to unmute Duell 40. I don't know what your name is, but I accidentally unmuted you last time and you didn't disrupt the meeting. So I'm going to take a chance.
All right, you're rather take a lot of chances there. My name is Stephen Deutsch. I live in Fairway Green, which overlooks the golf course. And I am a lawyer retired, but by nature, I'm very skeptical of many things. And I'm most skeptical of developers that are trying to change a local situation. First of all, they started off, they were going to maintain the golf course, maybe improve the restaurant. And then within a very short period of time, they started a proposal to start these townhouses or condos up on the other side of the course, near the clubhouse. And I think the way they try to, I can't even think of the word, I'm too old, that they're not upfront was displayed by Mr. Cooper, who, when he made his presentation, he had to have a phony background behind him. He wasn't sitting on the top of a building looking out at the city. He's probably sitting in a little room. But all that tremendous humor aside, the thing that concerns me most is two things. One, I think that having many of the buildings so close to Round Dune really affects our quality of life. And I think that's inappropriate. And also the way, the quality and the appearance of this particular area. But someone was talking about the water problems and that the water is increasing, rising. And I have a place out in Long Island, which we were being severely bombarded with high tides and things like that. And I think this is a serious problem here. I see on rainstorms that the golf course starts to rise, and building a wall around this is not going to protect it. When floods come in, and if they come in with any strong winds, the water bounces off the walls and creates an erosion problem with all properties next to it. Secondly, water downing Runner Road, if the wall is narrow or anything like that, just being contained in a wall, it can pick up tremendous speed and wipe out anything that's in front of it. So given the prospect that the sea is rising, and it is a very serious problem, and no one in this administration, I'm sorry about that, is taking that very seriously, we have to assume that this is going to continue for a long time. And I don't think there's any way that the homes built on this golf course are going to be protected from flood water. And then the town is going to be concerned since everybody has abandoned them.
Mr. Deutsch, your time is up.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up we have Olivier Jerry. And I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Okay, you should be able to speak.
Yes, good evening. That's perfect. I've been resident on Rock Ridge Road at the north limit of property for 18 years now, and another 6 years somewhere else in the village. I happen to be an engineer. I happen to have worked on city planning. I appreciate all the work done by the planning board and the applicant, but I would qualify this proposal as a high density for the village. Hundreds of people living here, hundreds of cars on this property, and 2 small access roads as it has been highlighted. I have 5 main concerns. I will be short because other people have been very eloquent about them. The first one is construction and the truck traffic that will happen. I'm in the zone that is qualified by the maps as 50 decibels, which is pretty high, and I'm not sure how long it will last, but it will probably be very difficult to bear for a long time. And I find it unsafe to have this kind of construction close to the homework school when it's operating. Second, the traffic itself once residents are coming. There are 2 very busy intersections with the Boston Post Road, River Street and Old Boston Post Road. Living there, you can see during especially the school hours, there is in very intense traffic with dozens of cars clogging the road up River Street, up and down Boston Post Road and so on. So imagine putting another 40 cars, 80 cars, that would be a nightmare, including for parents that are bringing their children to the homework school. 3, this design is ready for car traffic. Somebody I know called it a suburban design of the 50s. There is some natural space left for sure, but we can deplore the loss of 432 mature trees. And that doesn't seem to be really any place for pedestrians or bicycle people to enjoy the space. 4 is impact on commerce. There are long lines at Trader Joe's now. I hope it will subside, but parking at Stop and Shop is full without any more commerce locally or on the site, which would be great with restaurants and shops. That would be difficult. And number 5, everybody, not everybody, but many people mention it. The 5-foot raise is totally underestimated. Ms. Felsher, Mr. Cass, Mr. Goodman mentioned it. It's a disaster in the waiting. and a seawall as designed is probably not enough. So I have a negative opinion on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Amy Megan. Okay, you're up. If your microphone works.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I'll reset it. There you go.
Okay, my name is Amy Burlia Megan. I'm a local CPA. There's a couple of items here. I went to a meeting maybe about a month ago, 2 months ago by this time. We spent approximately, this is with the planning board, we spent approximately 1 hour, the planning board with Stuart Messenger, I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, going over some very grammatical errors in one of the documents that he had prepared. So complete waste of time. Again, I just see plenty of roadblocks here in a lot of ways. There's the discussion regarding these 423 trees of mature trees, excuse me, how they will be decimated. Well, listen, trees grow back. Trees grow at various rates depending upon the environment. And this is like a non-issue. This is a roadblock because you don't even give the developer an opportunity to begin to even address some of these issues. Larger trees, come on, they can grow back. The economic impact, looking at forms 990, those are easily accessible. The developer provided a tremendous amount of tax returns. Cindy Goldstein is very well aware because she too has done tax returns before and have prepared 1023s and et cetera. And these tax returns are done by professionals, and the professionals have a certain amount of credibility when they are preparing tax returns for the IRS. And I can only assume that this was a good firm and not one of these around the corner type of firms that would prepare this type of paperwork. And the third item is in the inadequate press. This is not so. Hampshire has said and has indicated in their paperwork that they will build up those roads and to improve these roads for egress. So every time you turn around, there's something new happening. This is not right. And it's all these things, all these issues that are great roadblocks. The other thing is that the money will help us regular taxpayers in the village of Mamaroneck. Also, there's people on the planning board, NIMBY. You know what NIMBY is, not in my backyard. I'm sorry, I really don't care about that. And you've got people on that planning board, Celia Fleischer, Cindy Goldstein, just to name a couple, and others that are involved in this, which is totally unfair. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Yes, any comment?
No, we just have some accusations here. We're here again tonight to talk about the applications that are in front of us. Okay, next.
Okay, I've got two folks that have their hands raised, but they don't have any identifying features. If you could please just send me an email, or if you want to type into the chat box your name. Oh, I got another person. So I'm going to skip over 006119 and KDCH until you let me know that you're a real person and you're not here to just hack and disturb the meeting. I'm going to turn Daria Loker on.
Hi there, it's Daria. Hi there.
sorry.
So I'd like to make an argument about the extenuating circumstances that we find ourselves in at this moment with COVID-19. So our local unemployment is creeping towards 25%, and the planning board has a properly zoned project, but refuses to endorse it despite the developer having rights. The reason given is that the access out of Orienta wouldn't be sufficient in a hurricane, or would have an issue with flooding, which begs the question of why their homes are currently being built, rebuilt, and added onto in Orienta. I really think that the planning board should consider this application for approval because there are people in this village who need jobs and whose families rely on them to feed them in this recession. Construction is an ideal first occupation to open up during the COVID-19 crisis because construction workers wear N95 masks in their daily work and can more safely work than other occupations. This project would create hundreds of jobs and raise millions in tax dollars every year. So I hope village residents can share in the economic benefits of the project. Thank you for listening. I hope my fellow comment writers cover other aspects of the discussion, but I wanted to mention this one.
Could you please tell us what town you live in?
Larchmont.
Thank you.
Let me just check the chat box real quick. One moment.
We just had those two people identify themselves
Probably.
on my screen. The two people that you asked to identify themselves.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having some issues here. There we go. Okay, Jane Herzog, you're up.
Thank you very much. Good evening. And I'm Jane Herzog. I live at 1002 Cove Road, where I've lived for almost 30 years. I'd like to thank the Planning Board for your extraordinary efforts on this application. And I'd like to just mention something about the use of private roads and remind the Planning Board that a petition was submitted and signed by every homeowner on Cove Road objecting to the use of this road for a housing development, which would seriously impact the neighborhood in which we live. In fact, all three roads that the developer plans to use are indeed private: Eagle Mills Road, Cove Road, and Cooper Avenue. The Planning Board should not consider a development that relies on the use of private roads only. We flood every time there is a big storm. It endangers all the residents. It endangers emergency vehicles coming in. And certainly it would endanger anybody living there and trying to get out of the development during a storm. We strongly object to the use of the road. We don't believe that it's legal to change the road. And I thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Kevin.
Can everyone hear me okay? Hello?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your time this evening. I'll try to be as concise as possible. My name is Kevin Duarte, and I am reaching out as a concerned.
Where do you live?
I am here as a concerned resident of the Mamaroneck community.
Where do you live? Do you
What
live
town do you live in?
I'm trying to tell you. I said I'm reaching out today because I am a concerned resident of the Mamaroneck community, where I've actually lived and worked for a long time now. I've actually been here for about 10 years myself, and I live near the Mamaroneck Avenue School. Now, I am actually reaching out today because I'm urging the Mamaroneck community and the appropriate authorities to actually vote yes and allow this project to go through. Now, the reason is extremely simple. The argument is that if there's anywhere that there ought to be luxury housing, it ought to be in Orienta. There's actually no reason to be opposed to this project when other development projects have already been approved throughout the zip code, including one at 1066 Sea Haven Drive, which was approved despite being below sea level. Additionally, there are also the Grand Street Lofts and the Mason, which are both located near the more densely populated area by the train station, which are similar in magnitude to the proposed project here at Hampshire. I see that those have been approved without the same concern for flooding, however. Now, the project proposal for Hampshire, I'm convinced, would force out exactly 0% of the existing Orienta community. So if we were able to approve the Mason and Grand Street and more as we speak, under the idea that the additional tenants will contribute to economic life and activities of Mamaroneck, then the Hampshire project should be approved as well. Voting no on this project would be a deviation from actually what's been going on and a deviation from the pattern of construction projects. Voting no on this project would actually, a deviation actually validates that this construction projects are not actually meant to contribute to economic life, rather to gentrify and kick out an existing population. This is actually the beauty of it all, is that it's happening right under your noses. And I don't think anyone here is actually aware of this fact. A no vote proves that we are protecting the Orienta community, which is about 7% of Mamaroneck, and that we're protecting them at the expense, not just in general, at the expense of the other 93% of Mamaroneck, where my neighbors and I find ourselves. So I actually urge you to vote yes on this project to prove that what we're doing is really in the best interests of our town and village, not because we want to kick out low-income tenants. Now, there's nothing complicated about voting no behind closed doors, but you know what? You guys have fun pretending you care about flooding or the environment. Thank you. That's all.
Great. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak?
We do. Next up is Barbara Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Barbara Brown. I live at 1501 Fairway Green, condominiums. The majority of our community would like the board to reconsider Hampshire's plan to build condominiums rather than the 104 houses. Thank you.
Just want to clarify for everyone who's listening that the condominium project is not permitted in our zoning code, and that's not the view of the planning board to change the. So that alternative, the secret review was rejected because it's not legal.
Okay, so next we have Dave Henderson. I have to promote you to a panelist, apparently, to make this work because you have an old version of Zoom.
Oh.
Okay, well, we'll try this.
And what would we do without you?
You hear me now?
Learn Zoom.
Yep. Okay, great. Just 5 quick points. I'm not a economics major, but I have an MBA with a number of courses in economics. This is a densely populated metropolitan marketplace. It has been proven that adding additional housing actually helps an economy. Just as a broad statement. So if people are thinking that this is going to create jobs and increase the economy of Mamaroneck, that's pretty debatable. 2 is, I've got kids, I live in Sylvan Lane. I have a kid to go to the school system. And be honestly, the classes are way oversized. There are 28 to 30 kids in a class. Every approval of housing in this town is the detriment of the kids that go in this school. And I can tell you with my kids go in the school system, it's a problem. We're hiring tutors and others to make up for putting 2 teachers in a class to help the classrooms. This is not going to help the school system. So if anyone has any interest in the education of their kids in this town, shouldn't be approving this project or any other project that's going to make that problem worse. 3, I live right on the golf course, right? If you look at those pictures and the size of those berms, it looks like New Orleans, all right? It's friggin' ridiculous, okay? These aren't 3-foot berms. These are huge berms with these houses and roads running it. What the heck do you think that's gonna look like? This isn't like putting bushes and trees up. It's gonna be an eyesore, okay? These huge berms. It's absolutely ridiculous that you think this is gonna look nice from the people who live right on the golf course. Let's see. I also find it interesting that people who do not live here and will be looking at it are making these comments for people who actually live in Orienta, and how great it's going to be for them. Where's the great society where we think about our neighbors and our greater people, we think about the pandemic and taking a social role in our community? I find it pretty disappointing when I have people who don't live in this neighborhood like insisting on putting this project in. I think, quite frankly, you have no business at all saying anything on this project. My last point, let me read my writing. And just because we approve other projects in the town doesn't mean you need to approve this project. And doesn't mean the projects that are approved in the other areas of town that were below the flood zone were appropriate. So to the gentleman who complained about housing going into flood zones and other area towns is not a reason to justify putting housing into this flood zone. So those are my 5 points. If you live in this neighborhood, these 5 points are pretty critical to us. If you have any feelings about the people who live in this community over here, you'd vote no. And I suggest this board vote no.
Next person.
Okay, I think that's everyone who, oh, we got another person. Okay, Keith. You're up.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Keith Patolo. I live in the village of Mamaroneck, off of Rushmore. I actually have lived here most of my life. I went to the Hommick School and I used to walk through that golf course. In fact, I was there driving through that golf course when just before that big storm where the whole golf course was pretty much put on underwater and that gentleman drowned. So anybody that wants to say it's not a flood zone, it is. It is definitely a flood zone. There's photos to prove it. As far as building it up, well, how far are you going to build it up? Is this going to be like a Katrina wall that tumbles down or, you know, floods adjoining communities? Already the houses all around the golf course have illegal pump outs. They're constantly pumping water out of their basements or crawl spaces or whatever they have. So, you know, to say it's not a flood zone, it is. And as far as economic impact, yeah, the schools are overcrowded and adding more houses is going to require more kids going to that school. It's going to eventually, long-term, cost the taxpayers. So when these developers, you know, pocket all the money and pay off their expensive lawyers, we as the town, we as the village, we're going to be stuck with the bill. All the other issues with the roadways already being crowded. You ever try to go to the Hommicks during summer camp or even during regular school time? It's pretty hard getting there. And then you have the adjacent streets that they're talking about, which they'll overload. All around, this is not a good idea. It's a recreational facility. It's been that way for years. It's the last big piece of land we have here. To give it away to the community, it would be an absolute tragedy. So think about the effects. You think you're going to make a lot of money off of this as a community? I think just the opposite. Long term, it's going to cost us both in losing a recreational facility and long-term tax dollars wasted. Penny wise, dollar foolish. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Just had somebody commenting in the chat that they'd like to speak. It's a username that already spoke, Seltzer, and it's a relative of that person who wants to, again, I think use the same username.
Okay. I will.
You have to do some technical things and remove Mr. Henderson.
Stu, you can speak now.
Okay, hi. My name is Noah Seltzer. I'm Stu's son. I've also lived at Sylvan Lane my whole life, and would like for you all to disapprove this project. I think there are two main things that kind of concern me. One is just, I think a lot of people talk about the economic benefit. And I think that if you look at the taxes and as well as this kind of argument that it's going to revitalize businesses, I think that's completely ridiculous. One, most of the taxes, as Mr. Henderson was saying, that the schools are already overcrowded, meaning that if we were to get these tax benefits, then it would mostly just have to go to improving the schools and hiring new teachers, and which would just kind of get us back to square one. it wouldn't really improve anything in as much as just kind of accommodating this increase of students. Two, I think one of the people said that Oriental makes up 7% of the community. This project would make up less than 1%, given the size that they're talking about, meaning that the ability for them to revitalize at all or to even have any sort of impact is going to be completely nil. And as well as, I mean, I think that bringing jobs is not really a real argument because these construction companies aren't necessarily going to hire from the community anyway. But I think that was pretty obvious. And yeah, so I think that because of that, it comes down to a pretty easy cost-benefit analysis where the benefit is pretty much nil, while the cost is much higher than that. It's going to affect a lot of members in the community. I think one person talked about this idea that NIMBY is like a mute argument, which doesn't really make sense because, I mean, we are the town of Mamaroneck, we are one community, and this project is going to affect our backyard and us, and it makes sense for people to be concerned about things that are going to be happening to the place they live. No one wants, if there is even the chance for a flood to negatively impact the community, it makes sense that we should all see that as a risk and something that we don't want other people in our community to have to deal with. So I think if we really even care about our community, if we care about our neighbors, and if we actually look at the cost benefit analysis, it makes no sense to go ahead with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. Anyone else?
I don't see any more hands up. If you called in and you'd like to make a comment, I only see one phone-in caller. If you'd like to make a comment, you can send me an email at gcutler@vomny, that's g@.org. That's gcutler@vomny.org. I do have 3 comments that came in via email that I can screen share if you'd like.
Well, we can read them into the record.
Okay. Can you see?
Yes, the print's a little small, yes. Okay. People are, again, we tried to be as clear as we could about what this process was. We're in a public hearing now on the applications. Anyone who wants to speak, including someone who was excited to give their opinion, you're welcome to give your opinion. This is the way the process works, and we're following the process. The secret goes first, and then the applications. Okay, so perhaps that person wants to call in, or I guess they emailed, I guess they're.
Yep, and I gave that option. It's possible they have technical reasons why they couldn't.
Okay.
Okay, I will stop the share. We've got a couple Q&A questions. Lillian, I don't know how to turn you on. Let me see if I can find you in the group in the attendee list. In one moment. Okay, you should be able to talk, Lillian. Okay, it seems your microphone is not connected. Let me share the call-in number. Sorry that this is complicated.
we have one more person that would like to speak, and we're having technical issues, just for the other people who are watching.
I've tried to unmute myself.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, please
I'm
state your name. Please state your name and tell us what town you live in.
Lillian Sicula, Village of Mamaroneck, 521 Orienta Avenue. I have been here since 1971. I've seen lots of changes on Hampshire. None. Change of trees, modifications of water traps, nothing has in any way made the floods less of a factor. I have photos going back almost to the first month that we were in this house. I cannot believe that this could in any way be modified. So I am definitely hoping that this will never occur and never impact this wonderful village of Mamaroneck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one addition. I was president.
Start the time. Hello?
We lost her.
Do you want me to put her back on? I actually didn't have the timer on.
She didn't speak that long.
Okay, hold on. I'll put you back on. Sorry.
I was president of the Orienta Point Association of the time of the application of Indian Point. And at that point, we did succeed in having the density reduced. Other developments took place at that same time, but this community has been very strong historically to preserve the character of this remarkable peninsula on which we live. I hope it'll continue for not only my grandchildren who I know, but my grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And there's also just a comment in the chat box. They asked for the comments that I showed on screen to be read into the record. I'll defer to you, Chair, if you want me to show them again.
Yeah, you're going right ahead. Put them back up and we'll read them. You can read them into the record.
Okay.
I mean, this is being video taped. It's part of the record.
Yeah.
But let's read it in.
Okay, just one sec. Okay, we have a comment from Anthony Morrow. He's stating the following: isn't the purpose of a public hearing to gather information to vote for an FEIS on the FEIS findings? Why in God's name would you vote before to tell the rest of us people in Mamaroneck we don't count? I am out of work and was hoping to do construction here. Thanks for what you have done to the village as a whole to protect your little precious rich enclave. One final comment to state to the board, please. There's a net after the school kids of 1 million a year, I'm assuming per year. So it is the profit for the village. That's from the second comment is, I have never spoken at a public hearing in my life and I was excited to give my opinion tonight. I find out you voted before the hearing started. I guess this is how the People's Republic of Mamaroneck works. That's Larry Albert. And then the last comment is, I'm in construction. I've lost work recently and I doubt my job is coming back to the ways I need to support my family. Why would you deny a project that has correct zoning and can create so many jobs? I need to work to feed my family, and saying you will deny a project because the trees aren't big enough for you is not a good reason. We are at 30% unemployment and this would create jobs. I find it disturbing that you already prepared to deny this project before we even have this public hearing tonight. Many of you may be wealthy, most of us in the village are not. And that was Carol David Torres.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think the public comment period is over.
We do have one more person. I'll defer to you, Chair.
Okay. All right. We haven't closed the public hearing, so.
Okay, Karen, just give me one moment to set up the stop clock, the stopwatch again. Okay.
Hi, this is Karen Robb, Rockridge Road. I abut the, I don't know what green it is. It's the one that's closest to Boston Post Road. I have a degree in plant and soil science, and I believe that if they start to do any construction on this land, they're going to destroy the soil structure forever, because more often than not, the soil is saturated. I look over, as does everybody else, when it floods. It's a virtual pond in most of the golf course. And in regards to those mature trees, those are hundreds of years old. They're habitats for all sorts of flora and fauna. And we all know that trees don't grow back 100 years and, you know, become stately oaks. And I also believe that if they did start to, you know, if you look at what they do, you know, like in the Dust Bowl, when you start to work soil that's wet, you lose all the structure, and it just doesn't come back to a friable, growable medium. And that's just basically off the top of my head what I wanted to say. And also being a resident of Larchmont my whole life, and going to hummocks, and people unfortunately drive their children to school, and we will look for and we will look forward to that day again. It worries me that there's going to be that much more traffic associated with this, and you know, the people that live on Eagle Knolls, that's a small little road. You can't even ride your bicycle on that road without, you know, if there's a car on it. So I am opposed to this as well. You know, I know that taxes and all that's important. However, I just don't think this, I think this land could be put to better use. Thank you.
Okay. We'll wait a couple of minutes. And,
Yep, and I got one more emailed comment.
okay.
Let me try and share it. Okay, and I'll read it out again. It just says, I urge you to adopt the FEIS for these homes. We need the jobs, we need the tax dollars, and we need another law, and we don't need another lawsuit brought on by a planning board that seems to refuse every project. That's from Joseph. I'm gonna butcher your last name.
Echeverria.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Could be Eck, but I think it's Etch. Okay.
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 I'm not seeing anybody else. I haven't gotten any emails, and no one's talking in the chat. Let me just check
All
the
right.
Q&A.
This is a question for Mr. Sposino. If we close the public hearing, can we still receive email comments if somebody thinks of something later on?
Well, you can certainly leave it open for written comments, but remember, you're working under a tight deadline here.
I know.
Unless
Everything has to be done by the end of this week, and we have a meeting on Wednesday, so that's our day to wrap everything up. So I'm inclined to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'm sorry, Chair. You got one more hand raised.
One more hand raised.
Yeah.
All right, coming in under the wire here.
Okay. Let me just set up the timer again.
Can't be doing this, so
Yeah.
Right.
Please, if you're, Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask that if anybody else wants to make a comment, to just raise your hand now so we know how many are left. That would be helpful.
Because we can't function like this. So raise your hand, let us know you want to speak, and we'll finish this off. Okay.
Okay, we've got
Everybody that wants to talk about the applications, although most people are talking about the project, but okay.
okay, we got 3 hands raised now. So
Okay.
that was good. All right, I'm gonna click on Patricia first. Okay, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
My name's Patricia. I grew up in Orienta on Protano, went to Central Hummocks Mamaroneck High School, and my father built the house. And I just want to talk about the sheer physical beauty of Mamaroneck and of that big open space, and how all the houses that are lined around it just enjoy that incredibly beautiful view with trees and nature. And it was so much a part of my life and still is. And I am against this proposal. It's just crazy. And maybe there can be some other way to help Hampshire. I don't know, just something else, help them make money, but this is not the way. This is dangerous. It's unsafe. The Cooper Lane is very, very narrow, and there's no way that more than one car can get through it, and you can't widen it. There's no possible way to widen it. Old Post Road is very narrow. It's a one-way street. It would just cause crazy traffic jam. And that's it. I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And just one more time, if you want to speak, raise your hand and just leave it raised up so I can see, you know, don't lower it once you raise it, just keep it raised. They saw some that were up and then they disappeared. All right, so next I'm going to go to Glenn. And I'll restart the clock.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, a couple of points.
Please identify yourself and tell us what town you live in.
Silver Street, Mamaroneck, New York, an old friend.
Hi, Glenn.
I have a couple of points. Number one, every person in this village has the right to speak on this project. That the neighbors think that the rest of us should mind our own business, well, you know what? That's not the way it works. This project affects every single person in this village. As for the schools and the so-called overcrowding, the schools are at 75% capacity to when I went to school. We do not have overflowing, overcrowded schools. The amount of money that the superintendent of schools said it would cost per student was based on a ridiculous estimate of breakdown of what it costs per student and what it costs per additional student. I think that we should have a project there. Maybe the size of the project would be too large, but the bottom line is golf courses, especially that golf course, because it starts so late in the season and you lose many days because of where it's located, is not feasible. Whether they should have the Board of Trustees changed to let cluster housing in would probably be the best solution, but that's not what's before this board. But I just want to make sure that this board has all its I's dotted and T's crossed, because we do not want another major lawsuit coming against this village. And that's exactly what we're looking at. So I hope that every single I is dotted and T is crossed in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I feel like I'm,
I do not see any more raised hands.
okay.
Of course, someone raises their hand as I say that. Okay, please, one more time, if you want to speak, please raise your hand now and just leave it raised through the app. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. All right, Iron Halperin. You should be able to speak.
Hi, I live in Larchmont, and as I understand, they have done environmental studies, and all the studies have been done. If for me, if the builder is within his rights, he's done all the environmental studies, what is the problem? How can we come into a resolution with the builder? Is it reducing the number of houses? I just don't want to have another lawsuit like we had with Westchester Day School and lose and cost the taxpayers. We work very hard for our money. And what is the resolution? If he is within his rights, maybe we can come to a negotiation so we can all work together in the community. And if he wants to build, maybe we can reduce the numbers. I don't know what the answer is, but there must be a resolution so it doesn't cost the taxpayers tons of money in, you know, in legal fees. That's all I can say. I mean, we all live in this area together. We all have children in the schools. Of course, the number of students in the schools are a question. You know, are we, you know, overpacked with students? The number of, you know, my children went to the school system here. That is a concern. But if he is within his rights, who are we to try to impose, you know, all the laws and all of that? We should have put the moratorium long time ago in place, so we don't come to this point. And what is it going to cost the taxpayers at the end of the day? We lost one case against Westchester Day School. We lost another case against Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club. How long are we going to drag this, and how much is this going to cost everybody? At the end of the day, he's going to have his day, and he's going to either win or lose. So what is the resolution? Is there any way we can come to a solution, to a resolution with him? That is my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Greg, any hands raised?
Not at this time.
This is the last call for anyone.
Motion to close the hearing.
I have a motion on the table to close the hearing. Before we second it and vote on it, let's just make sure we have no one else who wants to speak.
Absolutely.
Doesn't look like we do.
We do not.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to close this public hearing.
I'll second.
For the 5 applications. We now have a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Cindy?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Lou? You're mute. You're on mute, Lou. But he did mouth yes.
Got it? Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. So the public hearing is now closed. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Okay. We have draft resolutions. We have draft resolutions for tonight, but we need to make some changes on them. They will be finalized, and we will address the resolutions on the applications that were the subject of this public hearing at our next meeting, which is Wednesday, May 6th. Mr. Sposino, Mr. Cutler, Mr. Messenger, is there anything else we have to do tonight?
Not tonight.
Tonight? No, we'll finish on.
That's what I know.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn this planning board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Do a voice.
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you very much.
See you Wednesday.